Hey folks, welcome to a new video and a new video series. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about Destiny 2 and I have a lot of opinions. A lot of people might say unpopular opinions. So I will be making a series called Destiny 2 Hot Takes. And in this first episode, I actually want to touch on a lot of game dev design discussion. So yeah, I'll be talking a lot about that, and this first episode is a really great introduction into this series. So, we'll be covering things like enemy design, listening to feedback, and some production costs in game development. So, yeah, let's go. I'll be talking about champions today. So, what are champions? Well, champions are an enemy type in Destiny. So, you see that guy? Yep, you see him? He's a barrier knight. So, champions are basically a different enemy type, and they reuse old models for enemies. Oh boy, he saw me. They reuse old models for enemies, and they have this weird red wire effect. You can see it glinting a little bit with the white VFX. There are three types of champions. We have the barrier, we have the overload that's not in this lost sector, and we have unstoppables. So, they have special mechanics. You can see that the barrier knight's health bar is separated into three parts, and there's a reason for that. Let me show you. So when the barrier knight takes damage, you can see that he creates a barrier, and when the barrier is not damaged, he regains his health. So that's pretty cool. Overloads, they also regain health, and they are really fast. They teleport around. Unstoppables, they do not regain health, although they have a lot of it, and they can't be stunned or staggered by the typical means when you shoot them. They don't do these animations when they roll around and avoid damage and shots. No. Unstoppables just come for you. They just really want to get you. But they don't regen health, so that's cool. Right. So, how do you fight these guys? Because this guy seems pretty tough. Like, I'm actually gonna show you something with his barrier. So the poison from my bow is sticking, but look, I can shoot the barrier with the handgun. What's that all about? Well, champion enemies require a specific class armor mod, and I have it here. Piercing bowstring. Bows gain shield piercing arrows, which bypass combatant defenses. Strong against barrier champions. Wow. Cool. So specific weapon types can be made strong against these folks. And yeah, I can show you what happens when I actually focus him. I pierce the barrier, and he's stunned. He can activate the barrier again using that special animation and regain his health. Or I can just time it and kill him and pierce the barrier, and maybe while he's done like that, I can just burst him with another weapon now that he doesn't have the barrier. Right. So, this is what champions are. They appear in endgame content in also higher difficulties of certain game types. And I personally think the champions are pretty cool. So, what are the pros and cons of champions? What are the positives? So, the positives, like I showed you, is that they reuse old character models. So that's pretty cool. That's nice. So champions reuse old character models. They have that little wire visual effect around them, which also indicates when they're using their power, which is pretty cool. They are dangerous. They require your attention. Like, enemies like champions in video games, like you've probably seen them in other first-person shooters like Doom, like whatever. Enemies that require your attention, that buff other enemies or spawn new enemies. Like, you need to assess the board, you need to know how important every enemy is, when can I deal with them, how can I deal with them. And champions do offer that combat consideration, and it makes it really fun to deal with them. They're scary, but you know you can deal with them, you can stun them, you can burst them down, especially if you're in a coordinated team. Cool. But those on-the-fly decisions, I really love those. Right. The best thing about the champions, and this is why I have the artifact opened here, so Bungie are doing a seasonal model for Destiny 2, and each season normally rotates every 3 months. New story content, new content in general, but the thing they do, which I instantly fell in love with when I saw it, is this artifact. So you level up during the season, you get your artifact, and you start unlocking these mods. Now, the first roll, you can unlock anything from the start in the first roll. And that's usually where they put the champion mods. Now, there are also some champion mods here on the second to last row. We have Unstoppable Glaive, so you can use glaives for unstoppable champions. And we have Unstoppable Solar Melee abilities. That's pretty cool. And we have Overload Grenades when you use Void Grenades. Also pretty cool. So that's nice. Okay. And we have the other weapons that are for this season. So this is a way for Bungie to control the meta. They don't need to balance every weapon in the game, and let me tell you, balancing every weapon in the game is not a good idea. Lots of weapons. So they decided to force the meta in this way. If you want to do endgame content, well, you gotta focus your builds at least a little bit around these weapons and these champion enemies. Now, I absolutely love it. I cannot tell you how much I love this system. This is such a cheap and easy way to control the meta, and it rotates every 3 months. So yeah, okay, you don't like the meta these 3 months. You don't like barrier bows, which is a wrong opinion. Anyway, you don't like one of these options. Okay, fine. It will be gone soon. The season ends in a month. So yeah, it will be gone soon. Don't worry about it. And this way, they don't have to balance weapons, because when you balance weapons, you are kind of considering these balances for a longer period of time. But these mods to fight against the champions, they're just for 3 months, and next season we'll have other mods. That's pretty cool. I love it. I love it. I can't tell you how much I love this system. Okay, so what are the negatives? Right. Well, this is where the unpopular portion will come in. A lot of people don't like champions, but they don't like specific things, and we're gonna discuss these. So, I mentioned overload champions, right? So, overload champions have technical issues. At least I see it as a technical issue. Sometimes their stun doesn't register, sometimes it registers 3 times at once, which is very funny, because it plays a sound effect every time you stun them. Yeah, that's not great. Because sometimes you think you stunned the overload champion, and they still shoot at you and possibly kill you because they're strong. And if you're playing the higher level contents, yeah, they probably kill you. So that's not fun. And things like overload auto rifles and submachine guns, yeah, they require a lot of bullets. It says uninterrupted fire, but I think it might be related to just a damage thing. Because if all three people are shooting at a champion with an auto rifle mod, they're probably gonna stun them pretty quickly. But if you're solo, sometimes you need to waste half a mag or even more into them. So yeah, and that doesn't feel good. And yeah, okay, yeah, I agree. Doesn't feel good. Now the big one, the big problem here is that people don't like that it limits your build crafting potential. So for example, I currently have a build that is revolves heavily around using grenades, using my ultimate, the Mobius quiver, with my Orpheus rig exotics. So yeah. But people think that having these seasonal champion mods, well, this is actually restricting your loadout, because as you saw, I was going in the Lost Sector with a bow and a hand cannon for unstoppables. And the reason I was doing that is because there is an unstoppable in that Lost Sector, but there's also barrier champions. Those are the two types that appear there. But both mods are tied to primary ammo weapons. You can see the white icon next to the power level number says primary. Yeah, both of these weapons are use primary ammo. Primary ammo weapons are usually reserved for red bar enemies, for the ads, the minor guys. And yeah, they're typically not used for yellow bar majors, bosses. Those are typically reserved for special ammo type weapons. So things like snipers, shotguns, grenade launchers, fusion rifles, weapons that have smaller reserves and a smaller mag size, but deal more damage. So less ammo, more damage, more burst damage. And we also have the heavy weapon type, which is same idea to the extreme. Less ammo in the mag, 1, less total reserves, but a lot of damage. And people really don't like that champion mods are just tied to, as you can see, primary ammo weapons. Only the glaive uses special ammo and does more damage. And the glaive is pretty good for unstoppable, actually. Like, no joke. And I would agree, yeah. I think we should use more special weapon types here. We've used grenade launchers and snipers in the past, and it felt so good. Oh, it felt amazing. Maybe not just one, but have 2 or maybe 3 weapons the special weapon types that rotate, but also have a lot of primary ammo weapon types as well. Yeah, that would be good. A lot of people also have a problem with Bungie using just a huge number of champions in endgame activities. And I don't know how I feel about that. The issue is that, so basically champions require a lot of focus. You need to focus, you need to stun them, you need to burst them down, you need to get rid of them. Right, but if you go into, let's say, Master Vault of Glass, where there's more champions, as you can see, champions, mob. This mode contains additional champions. Yeah, that starts getting really annoying. Like, it can get overwhelming, and it can get a little bit too much. So, yeah, okay. Maybe they should tone down the number of champions in those difficulty types. Specifically, Vault of Glass. I think the current amount of champions in the Grandmaster Nightfalls are actually spot on. I think they're fine. I think that's the right amount of champions for the biggest challenge in the Nightfalls. So, the last two complaints are kind of interesting, and I don't agree with them at all. One of them is that champion mods are tied to the gauntlets armor type. So you have these two slots here that are reserved for champion mods for increased reload speeds, grenade mods, stow speeds, etc. I don't agree with this criticism because most of these mods are used for PvP, and PvP doesn't have champions, so we really don't need these mods. Like, they're nice to have. They are nice to have, but they don't have that big of an impact, honestly, so you could easily go without them. But, okay, let's see. Let's say, yeah, it does limit it. Let's say it would be a good idea to have these mods here in the Ghost Shell. Okay, yeah, sure, okay. Could do that. I don't think the impact of just removing them from here is too big. I think you could have these mods here instead of these two. Yeah, sure. Fine. But again, I don't think it's that big of a problem. And the final one is kind of tied to the first one, that it limits build crafting. Like, we have all of these insane build options with the fragments, the aspect, the different abilities, the different ultimates, the supers. Sorry, I always confuse them with things from other games. And people are like, we have all of these amazing build crafting opportunities. I can craft a build using my exotic armor, with my mods, with my exotic weapon, with other weapons, with my subclass, with my aspects, with my fragments, and so on. And also, the artifact mods, they're really good. They can also be used in build crafting. And people feel like Bungie's opening up the game so much with the build crafting, but is still limiting it too much with the champion mods, and the necessity for them to be stunned with only specific weapon types. Okay, let's address the criticism. A lot of this "it limits build creativity" discussion comes from people that, on average, and I have watched videos, I have read threads, I have read the subreddits of Destiny and the Twitter threads. A lot of these people were the same people who used 3 meta weapons for a full year because that was the best option. That's kind of hypocritical in my eyes. Like, so you're gonna use the meta option for an entire year before we have the seasonal rotations, but the seasonal rotations are limiting build crafting. Yeah, sorry, but I have had more fun thinking up builds when I got introduced to these limitations. It was actually kind of incredible. I have found old weapons that I use so much more often now, and I think that is a net benefit for the game. Also, you saw that the barrier champion needed to play an animation for the barrier to activate. Well, guess what stasis does? It freezes targets, and yes, that means it can freeze you in a particular animation frame. So, stasis is a hard counter to champions because their abilities are tied to their animations. Limit them in a way so they never get to that animation, burst them down. No champion, no ability, no regen, no barrier, no unstoppable. Unstoppable got stopped. So yeah, there are ways to deal with this, and also like most activities required 3 players. Not okay, so every player has 3 weapon slots. Cool. But there's only 2 champion types. So 3 players, 3 slots, 9 in total, only 2 champion types. So really, you're not really all that limited. And I know some people will say, well, it's good for everyone on the fire team to have champion mods covered. It is good, it is not required. So no, I think there are more ways to deal with champions. Also, if you are working within a coordinated team, you can just burst them down. You don't even have to have champion mods. Champion mods just stun them and prevent them from putting their aggression and surprising you from somewhere. But if you are careful, if you are strategic, you can just take care of them instantly. Plus, I already kind of mentioned this, but GMs already limit you. GMs remove your radar, they introduce more champions, they add other very insane modifiers, match game being one of them. So basically, every enemy with an elemental shield needs to have that element be met in the weapons that you're shooting them with. So if you don't do that, their shields take almost no damage. Also, GMs introduce a lot of enemy density. Enemies are stronger, they have more health, they're deadlier. GMs, through their enemy placement, through their difficulty, through their level design, they are already limiting your playstyle, because that is the challenge. How can you thrive within these limitations? That is why I do not agree with the idea that champions are too limiting on build crafting. They're just not. You can have amazing builds. And yeah, okay, you cannot have every single build in endgame content. I agree with that. But there's so many weapons. There are so many auto rifles, scout rifles, pulse rifles, hand cannons, everything, every weapon type. And that is just the regular legendary weapon types. I didn't even mention exotics. There's also exotic everything. Not as much as the legendary, of course, but they're still present. Hand cannon, pulse rifle, scout rifle, submachine gun. And there are also exotic weapons that have intrinsic anti-barrier champion capabilities. There are also ones for overload and ones for unstoppable. And they'll keep adding more. So again, I do not agree. I agree that there is some limitation. I don't agree that that limitation is suffocating or that it somehow limits you too much to what you're doing. Sorry, I don't agree. Right. What are the potential solutions to some of these problems that we've mentioned? Well, I think that most of the problems and most of the criticisms actually have some pretty simple solutions. Although I have read a lot of solutions that are just buck wild. Like for example, there was this enemy type in Scourge of the Past, the Berserkers. So you had to shoot them in their chest and in their back and then burst them down because they did a whole animation. I think it did a wipe. Wow, I've forgotten one of my favorite raids. Wow. So yeah, Berserkers are pretty fun, and people want them to return as a champion type. This is a terrible idea. So, let me tell you why. Like, Berserkers had a amazing level design built around them. So a lot of them were on rooftops, big open rooftop, because you go, you shoot them at the front, you shoot them at the back, done, you're done. Plus, Berserkers also had they were in a raid, and raids are a 6-player activity, so you could deal with them very easily. You could dedicate it only to people, or you can dedicate all 6. It was up to you. And so this is a fairly open area here. Let's say it's decent. It's decently open, and you could probably fight a berserker if he's standing right there. You shoot him right there. Your buddy is standing somewhere behind him. He can move around a little bit. And yeah, not a lot of Nightfalls and other endgame activities have this much room for an enemy like that. Like, also, most of the berserkers were alone. They were just roaming the open streets of the Scourge of the past raids. They had a lot of freedom of movement. They didn't have a lot of enemies surrounding them, and even when they did, they were dealt with easily. So they could move, you could shoot them, and you could move in front of them and behind them. But yeah, this is a consideration that people need to think about when discussing these enemies. And yeah, sadly, I don't agree. I don't think that berserkers, I think that their mechanic of shoot them in the weak spots, I think that's cool. And we could probably use them for future champions. But the exact same implementation right now into this game? No. Some Grandmaster Nightfalls are gonna become impossible with champions like that. You could remove almost every champion in current GMs and just introduce 2 berserkers. GG, nobody would complete them. So, another thing I've seen is, hey, what about more ways to stun? What if your entire subclass could stun a particular champion? Like, what if Solar and Stasis could stun, even though Stasis can already stun, haha. What if Solar and Stasis could stun overloads? Okay, yeah, well, Solar melee abilities can stun unstoppables. Void grenades, they can stun overloads. I think there is some merit to this idea. I think it's fine. I think you could add 2 more mods here for maybe 1 mod per subclass. Just and rotate them. Sometimes it's gonna be the grenade, other times it's gonna be the powered melee ability. Honestly, you could actually add a mod that's just after you use your class ability, your next shot stuns overload champions. Okay, yeah, that's easier to implement. There gonna be issues with that. People are gonna miss their first shot and they're not gonna stun anything. But I agree, that is an easier implementation. Cool. Another solution I've heard is, what if every weapon type and every anti-champion mod was available right from the bat? Like, you have them all. You have them all the time. But they were more expensive. And the artifact mods, the blue ones, they offered cheaper versions. As you can see right now, the artifact mod for the bow and the hand cannon, they cost 1. And in fact, almost all of them cost 1. Yeah, even these ones cost 1. Only the Unstoppable Glaive costs 5 energy from a total of 5. From a total of 10, sorry. So yeah, you could do that. You could honestly just have this system. Although I suggest you make these generic anti-champion mods really expensive, like more than 5, like 8, maybe even 10, and tie them to the ghost or whatever. And honestly, I'm not completely on board with this solution, because even though it completely removes the idea of, oh, it limits build crafting. Yeah, it does, but some people are just gonna dedicate the 10 armor energy to one single mod, and they'll be like, I am never taking this off ever. But the idea is decent. It's a very good idea. I actually really liked it when I read it. Yeah, I think it's good, and I think it will cause most people to just stick with the seasonal mods, which is, yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal of the solution. So yeah, good job. So yeah, a lot of solutions, but like I said, I think that the champions' problems right now, the ones they do have, I think they can be addressed really easily with small adjustments. Don't go all out. Don't go insane on the whole thing. But yeah, keep offering solutions. Lots of good ideas here, guys. And even though most and almost all of your ideas are not gonna be implemented in the way you think, you might just spark an idea in one of the designer's head, and they can say, hey, actually, we can do something like that, and they come to a better conclusion in the end. I think that's awesome. So yeah, keep sharing your feedback. But here's the thing about feedback. Lots of people, I read a lot of threads, I watched a lot of videos, I read Twitter. Lots of people do not know how to deliver their feedback. When you're designing a game, you know that you should have pros, cons, and potential solutions or alternatives to your system. Much like the structure of this video. It's almost like I planned this out. Wow, planning for a video. Who would have thought? I do these things. Yeah, I wanted to show it off because I think it's a very good system. Like, what are the pros and cons of the systems you're designing? What are the potential solutions to the problems? What are the alternatives? Maybe one of your alternatives is actually better than your current proposal, and you might like it after prototyping and then testing it. Just try it out. And you will need feedback. You need players playing your thing to see where the problems come from, because you're looking at systems. You're not always gonna know the impact the system has on a player, and you're not gonna know in every situation, because you can't account for every situation in a complex game like this. Like, I was just talking about artifact mods and armor mods, and I probably lost half of you who don't play this, because for those broken like us playing this game, oh yeah, we know what we're doing. We're insane. Help us. The other problem is the tone and language. It's good for players to communicate frustration. This is important feedback for the designers, because they know, okay, this is a stress point for the players. Why? How can we address it? But most of the feedback was, this is a lazy and bad implementation. Wah. Are Bungie's devs drunk? Wah. Like, these are not productive comments. You know the answer to this question. Developers are not lazy. We are overworked like hell. Come on. The reason something ships in a bad state is due to management issues, some other production issues, or some, I don't know, maybe there wasn't enough time and they wanted to put it out even in a broken state, but then address it with a few patches each week. Kind of like the crafting system, which is in a great state right now. So yeah, a lot of people don't know how to communicate. Like, don't harass developers. Don't do that shit. And you don't know how a studio allocates its resources. Like, you don't know how Bungie operates. Even after all of these documentaries and interviews and videos and discussions and their weekly posts, you do not know how they operate their business. They probably have a lot of people put on new content, and from what we saw in this year's GDC, they are looking for cheap and effective solutions. We saw how many players they brought with the Legend and Master difficulty lost sectors, like how many weekly players they had, and how easy it was to implement that. And I think they should strive for this. I think that a developer should always consider their options, like make sure you are not wasting your time. Make sure you have everyone, or almost everyone, focused on the new things and making that work. And if it doesn't work, have quick and easy solutions to them. So yeah, Destiny 2 is a big game with a lot of players, and a lot of players have a lot of complicated opinions about just one enemy type. We talked about a singular enemy type. I could have gone more in depth. And yeah, it's a complicated topic, and designers are constantly asking these questions, and they're constantly searching for solutions. And let me tell you this, Bungie know all of this. Like, it took me 2 days to research this topic, to read through all of this. Their community managers read through everything. They know everything you've said, and they probably had these opinions before they even shipped them, because they also play the game, and they are the first to recognize these problems, because the creator of a given piece of media are always the most critical of themselves and their work. They always see the flaws. It's okay. They know. But like I said, feedback is important to design, so just keep doing what you're doing. But do not harass developers. Like, Jesus Christ, stop doing that. And yeah, this was my hot take on Destiny 2 and its champions. Future episodes will probably come, I don't know when, honestly. I just wanted to get this one out there because people were really mad about champions, and I didn't see a lot of balance in the discussion, so wanted to put my 2 cents on here. And got a chance to talk about how design, feedback, and production works a little bit. Could always go more in depth, but this video is gonna take forever, holy hell. So yeah, thank you for watching, and see you next time.